Three settings: the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO. These control the exposure, but every single one of them also control a side effect. And for ISO, that's gonna be noise, which makes it the easiest exposure control of the three. ISO is nothing more than a digital brightness control. See it as making a dark image brighter through a simple slider. Unfortunately, this introduces noise, definitely when it's very dark and the ISO needs to be pumped up. When taking a picture with your phone in low light environments, you also see a lot of noise. Usually these photos don't look so good. It's the automatic exposure setting in your phone that is cranking up the ISO to expose it better. And with video, it's the same. In a dark scene, the automatic exposure control will crank up the ISO, resulting in too much noise in your video. So, as a filmmaker, what can we do? Well, first of all, try to keep the ISO as low as possible and expose the sensor better using other techniques like opening up the aperture or changing the shutter speed, which we'll look at in the next lesson. But you can also try to make your environment more bright using lights. Or if you're shooting an after movie, go stand closer to the party lights. Anything that helps to keep the ISO to a minimum. Now, when shooting in bright environments like outside during a sunny day, keep an eye out for the ISO setting. I've seen it happen way too much that aspiring filmmakers overlook this setting and actually are shooting at a very high ISO. They have lots of trouble to decrease the exposure and the video will be very noisy. So try to make a habit of it to always check the three exposure settings with every change in your environment. When you go from inside to outdoor or vice versa, check these three settings and not just one of them. Now, what can we do as filmmakers? Should we just keep the ISO to a minimum at all time? Well, of course not. You see, every camera is a little bit different. Some can produce a pretty clean video at high ISOs, while other cameras produce noise pretty fast. It's important to know what your camera can handle and what the maximum ISO is that you should go for. If your camera is capable of going up to 128,000 ISO, it doesn't mean that you should actually use that. Maybe 6,400 is already the acceptable maximum. So I want you to figure that out for your own camera. Put it in manual mode and record some video at different ISO settings. See for yourself what is still acceptable and at which point it isn't anymore. Now we'll have a look at the shutter speed in the next lesson, and then it's time for you to take a quick break and practice these settings.